It's an amazing looking festival, and it's so focused on pilots. This is like the new Sundance for television. It has that feel.
It's a really great idea to do a festival for serialized material. I think it's cool. It's kind of ahead of its time.
They seem to be really tapping into a broad spectrum of both new and emerging talent and also more established talent.
We're really excited because we didn't realize that we were part of this wave of independent television. Our next favorite TV shows are going to be independently produced.
It's so exciting to be at Series Fest with this project because television is where all the big risks are being taken, where the most exciting work is happening. And this is a festival that celebrates that.
Shake off some shivers. And please help me welcome Steve Green, Associate TV Editor at IndieWire. Steve, I'll let you take it away.
Fantastic. Thank you, Claire. You are all in luck. Thank you for sticking around because we have two people to talk about this episode that you just watched. The co-creators of Candy. Please welcome Robin Veith and Nick Antosca. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, are we sitting in a particular chair? Yeah, I think this works, right? We've got room. Again, thank you all for sticking around, and thank you for joining us. I think there are a lot of different ways to sort of talk about this episode, but at the risk of overthinking it, let's start with that title sequence, which is incredible, and I feel like sets the perfect tone for everything that's going to come after it. So I guess where in the process do you did that sort of come in, and what kind of conversations did you have about what the audience's first sort of impression of the show was going to be?
I'm just a huge fan of opening title sequences, and they've kind of gone by the wayside lately. So I just kind of really wanted one, and if you're going to do one, why not go to the best? And went to Imaginary Forces, who did the opening sequence for Mad Men. So I know what they can do. And the theme music came from Ariel Marks, our composer. And so when we played Ariel's music for Imaginary Forces, they just kind of took off with it and came up with this whole concept. And throughout this entire production and project, our principle has basically been hire brilliant people, then let them be brilliant. And so a lot of it was just, seeing what these amazing artists come up with and just, give them a thumbs up, tell them to keep going.
And Nick, it's got to be fun for you. Your name gets tossed right onto the side afterward towards the very end.
Yeah, totally. And my favorite though is my producing partner Alex Headland, which is right in the scissors, and then so. But yeah, I like to go through the meat grinder.
So when you're working on a project like this, it seems like there are maybe two options. Either you sort of research everything before you start writing, or you try and write knowing what you know about it already, and then kind of let the research that you do and the people that you talk to kind of inform that. So I guess did this come down one side or the other, or was it kind of a mixture of both?
It's kind of a mixture because we did a ton of research, but the unique quality of this story is that we're never going to know. I mean, there's just no way to know. If two women walk into a room at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Friday and one walks out, the one who walks out gets to tell the story in 1980. There's just no DNA evidence that there's just nothing of the modern accoutrement that we're used to today. So yes, we did a ton of research, but you're also just sort of free-falling as well, because you kind of have to just decide how to tell the story without ever knowing you're never going to know.
And we did get the giant box of stuff that Jim Atkinson sent to Robin, and actually Robin would have this in the pitches and like show the executives this huge box of material from the court case and everything, and that
It was so great. It had this like library file kind of thing. For somebody who loves paper as much as I do, it was very fetishistic. It was just like rub this box and all these. And it was typed on onion skin. I just loved it.
And it's something tangible. It's like you know that like that file is like what would have been handled like back.
Yeah, I mean we had a copy of Candy's therapist notes from their hypnosis session. We had things that even when I called the County Courthouse looking for documents, they're just like, well, we can't give you the grand jury. So I was like, oh, I have those. They're like, what? So I don't know how Jim got them, but he passed them on to me. But yeah, we just devoured every legal document we could get and interviewed as many people as we could, or were willing to. And yeah, you just kind of, and every day in the room was a debate, which was the best kind of writer's room you can have, is just people just constantly have a different point of view, and every time we would interview somebody, opinions would change. And a lot of times it just would depend on what was going on in my life at that moment, or what happened 10 minutes ago, like would reflect like what my opinion was of the matter at hand. It was wild. I mean, we had a ton of research, but at some point you just got to run.
And also the nature of, like when Robin is calling the Collin County Courthouse and all that kind of stuff, and so some stuff is coming in as we're writing, it's like the writer's room is going, and then new stuff comes in. So you have to be kind of researching. We don't have the luxury of having every single thing that we're going to have when the writer's room starts. And so you had written the pilot, and then some more stuff came in, like as we were going. So it's,
yeah, I mean, God love these young people in the rooms now. Like our support staff, like found people's Facebook pages and their old yearbooks, which are online, like which is horrifying to me. Like your yearbooks are online. Like they just know how to dig into these things. Like I reached my technological education limit maybe 10 years ago, so I just lean on them a lot for the research.
yeah, that's something that we didn't say on the True Crime panel. Like, you need really good writer's assistants and really good research assistants, and like the script coordinators. You got to hire people who love to dive into this stuff.
Your support staff is everything. I started out as support staff, so it's something that's very important to both of us, is that we, even though we may be interviewing you for, room PA or assistant or something, like, I want to read your sample because now you're my project.
Nick talked about Robin, you writing the pilot. It seems like with a story like this, there are a number of different places you can choose to start. And it seems like very pointedly this doesn't go in chronological order. It focuses on sort of the event itself and then sort of ripples outward. Was that, I guess, what sort of thought process went into picking that as the starting point versus maybe like starting in 1978 and moving forward?
We talked about it, and we figured what was going to be key to telling this story was establishing the world, world building as immediate as you could. And having grown up in these small towns, the way that we talked about really establishing that was a day in a life mode. So we wanted to spend a day with these people. It just happens to be the day that changed everything.
And you have that on screen, the day she died, which is very simple and very powerful at the same time. Was that something that was an idea from early in the process, or did that sort of come up later?
That was Nick's first note on my first draft. It was like, yeah, that would be cool if you just said. I was like, yeah, that would be cool. He's my walking encyclopedia of art house horror and my touchstone of building suspense.
And,
aesthetically, as we started originally talking about this project, it was like, well, I know axe murders, and Robin knows great character drama, so this might be a good fit of sensibilities.
And I feel like one of the sort of central ideas in both of those things that you just mentioned is that like there's sort of natural dark humor in here, and that's sort of been the case on a lot of shows that both of you have worked on. Where do you sort of find that line between having a Tim Simons dad joke and not letting it distract too much from sort of the tone that you're building and what you're building towards?
I wish I could say it was more calculated than it is, but honestly, it's just the way that I write. It's just life is how I experienced it. Every Tim Simons joke you'll see in this show was from my grandfather. I have like a Rolodex in my head. My grandfather was the funniest person I've ever met, and would do these things like pretend to be upset that we were at the house and we would just laugh, and people just like, I don't know if that's funny. I'm like, it was hilarious. But so it's just the way they write. I mean, even back on Mad Men, we would be pitching out episodes in a season, and Matt Weiner would be like, okay, time for the comedy. Robin, you're up. I'm like, am I funny? And even when I turned in Candy, they're just like, it's so funny. I'm like, is it? But
What's
it's
also-
like, I'll just keep writing the way I write. If I guess it's dark comedy. I'm good with that.
And it's in the casting too, that you chose to cast Tim Simons, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an obvious choice. And executive tough questions when you make that choice. And, I think that was part of the brilliance of like putting it together and he's so great in it.
He's so great.
We've gone this long without talking about Jessica yet. It obviously before this show, she was in first season of The Sinner, where she's playing a character who does this crime, and you sort of spend the whole season trying to figure out why. Was that helpful to sort of have that as a proof of concept, to know that she could really play those internal, like, and really get to the heart of the, the question at the heart of the series of why and how and did she?
I've just been very familiar with her work, and more than her actual performance in The Sinner, it's just I respect the shit out of somebody who will make a bold choice. Like that's what I'm down for. And she's so. We had a meeting with her, and she was just so smart and so absolutely into it. It's just, and she had a whole take on Candy that had never come up in our sort of conception of it. Was just this like. She saw her as this sort of like source of energy and just beaming light, out of her. And that's kind of like the Venus flytrap, that kind of like draws people to her. And I was just like, I just thought she was a malignant narcissist. But your take is way more interesting. So working with her, and she's a legit producer. She's got 2 hit TV shows, I think. One she's not even in. One she was only in for 1 season. So she's incredibly smart. She's a savvy producer. She was key in production and post and working. She was on marketing calls. Like she knows what she's doing. And other than that, she's just a wonderful human being. So it was like Christmas when she came on board.
And that sort of beam of energy idea, it's a perfect compliment for that line that she repeats over and over again about her justification for not coming. Like that it seems like the kind of thing that like when you tap into such a simple like way to explain a character like that, then like all those other pieces just kind of fall into line.
Yeah, I mean, and she really sold it. Which we needed her to do, because I remember early drafts when we were working on the pilot. One note came in from some executive just like, you've said this before. I'm like, yeah, I know. we're going to say it 3 more times. That's a character thing.
And it gets more sinister every single time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's just, Jess is just incredible. And, even if I hadn't seen The Sinner, I would have wanted her, because I also, like I said, I love people who make a bold choice. I also... learned early on that if you throw something completely different at somebody, they'll rise to it. I mean, look at Tim Simons. Like everybody knows him as, Jonah from Veep, and now he's playing this like warm, squishy, dad dork, and like he was so into it. And Pablo Schreiber, who's now Master Chief, wanted to play, like a beta male computer nerd. We're like, sure, let's do it. I mean, and Tim Tim and Pablo are both 6'8", 6'7", 6'8". They're just giants. And like they both wanted to play these sort of like computer nerd beta males. We're like, yeah, let's do it. And Melanie and Jessica were really excited because it made them look teeny tiny next to these big guys. And they're both like 5'7", 5'8" or something, which is to me a giant at 5'4".
One of the things that comes across, especially seeing on the big screen, is just I love the color in this. Like you obviously have the natural 1970s earth tones for all the interiors, but like even like the way the red carpet pops in that hotel room is great. And so I guess when you're at the script stage, how much are you thinking about what the sort of overall look is going to be, and how much do you try to obviously Michael does a great job of sort of bringing that to life, but what kind of things were you trying to keep in mind at the script level?
Yeah, how much did you have it visualized, actually?
I was just going to ask you if you remember. I think very little, honestly. Like, because I came up in theater, and I've also just learned over the years that if you give people signposts, like clear signposts, but keep sort of what you want hidden, then I can always get what I pictured, but I'm never going to get more than that if I don't let people interpret it themselves. And that's the wonderful collaborative medium that is television. And so when we had Simon Dennis, our DP, come on board, and Jamie Walker McCall, our production designer, and Bob Blackman, our costume designer, they just kind of like, with Mike Uppendahl, the director, just kind of rallied around this concept of just, you know, the obvious thing would be to say that, you know, we're bored in suburbia, so everything's beige. It's like, no, we're going harvest tones, like hardcore 70s. And so the only thing, like, I would add, it's just like, I would just walk around set and be like, we had that, we had that, we had that. And I've fallen in love with wall-to-wall carpeting as a result. It's great.
We always knew that Mike was going to direct, so it was like there's a certain safety net there where it's like there's a director that you trust, and you go back with Mike for so long. It's just like, I mean, the two of them are like two halves of the same brain.
Yeah, we met when we were 19 years old in theater school, and we had like a little nonprofit theater company where he would direct plays and I would like produce and stage manage. So we're a little codependent. But yeah, I mean, the great thing about Mike is that he takes whatever I have and makes it better, and you know, and then he's sort of marshaled this team of department heads who then took what he had and made it better. And you know, I can always get back to what I thought, but like what they came up with was so much better. Like Simon, our DP, like what it's called, detuning.
Detune the lenses.
Yeah, he basically fucked up his own lenses because he wanted because it gave it a sort of vintage feel without the processing in post. So I was like, wait, Simon just messed up a bunch of lenses. They're like, yep, that's why we can't get new cameras in. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I feel like Ariel Mark's doing the same thing. You have these like sort of decaying, like it's almost like a music box that's kind of out of tune a little bit in some points.
Yeah, and what Ariel did, which I find getting rare these days too, is truly embrace melody. Instead of just like a droning kind of tone thing, she like went for melody, and it's just so infuriating because she wanted you to be frustrated with it as much as charmed. So it seems like it's this fairy tale thing, but if you listen, like the beats are a little off, and it never quite resolves. Like every time you think you're gonna hear a movement resolve, it just doesn't in the most infuriating way. And you know, the editors jumped on board with that too. So even in the editing style, it's just slightly off kilter than what people are used to, a certain pace and you know and rhythm to things, and we're like, just push it like a second to a half second off of that, and so you just.
when Candy goes into the house and there's the shot of the front door, and before the cut to the wide, like there's that extra like second and a half where you're just like, what's gonna happen? Like are we gonna hear something? Like, yeah, it's really unnerving.
And what Ariel does is really interesting. She is so versatile. Before this she did Shiva Baby, which was one of my favorite movies I don't know if it was last year. I can't keep track of time. And
It's on HBO Max if you haven't seen it yet.
That's so psychological and atonal. And then when we first started talking to her, she was like, "How would you guys feel about this being really melodic?" And then she had a brilliant take on it.
Yeah. I mean, she was wonderful to work with because, like, she would ask me what I want, and I'd just be like, think of it as just like a Blade Runner and Twin Peaks had a baby. But also I love in Eyes Wide Shut when it's just like, boom. And she's like, okay, that's a lot. I'm like, yeah, whatever that means to you.
And we'll have some time for audience questions too. So if you have something you're curious about, get those questions ready. From another element of what you can hear, just the sound mix in this is great. And the crying baby, is that a library effect? Is that something you recorded specifically for this? Because it's
probably
so
Mark's
specific.
baby. Is it Mark's baby?
No, that's the actual actor baby.
Okay.
Like it had a bad day on set. Don't write a 3-minute scene with an infant in it. Just don't do it. Don't do it to your actors. I mean, the baby paid off, like in the scene with Pablo and Melanie, Betty and Ellen, and they go wah at like the right time. Other than that thing was just shrieking, and we just recorded it at all.
Because it's so specific, and like when it's played over the.
It's great, baby.
When it's played over them imitating Valerie in the car, like it's so subtle, and it's like it really just like gets right in your brain.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of terrible things about this day and about this story in this case, but the thing that was inarguable to all of us, the thing that is unforgivable, is that she left that baby in that house. As a mother of 2 children, she left that baby in that house. And so we just wanted to constantly remind the audience that there's a baby in there.
Yeah, it's like even if she was in shock after what happened, and you go further along, you hear her story, her version of what happened in the house. Even if she was in shock then, like she still went to the movies and came out of the movies and like knew that the baby was there. I mean, that sticks with you.
And I is that dried blood on or supposed to be dried blood on the back of the baby, sort of
No, that's a diaper blowout.
Okay. That's I wasn't sure, and I felt like either option would be valid. So with an episode like this, given that a lot of people are coming in sort of knowing what is sort of going to happen, I guess one of the things to sort of keep in mind as you were writing this was not to overshadow it or foreshadow it too much, and not to sort of be too cute about like what people don't know is already coming. And I guess what sort of things were you keeping in mind to because like in one way, if you have all of these characters completely, blissful and happy, then it's ironic and you kind of lose it. But at the same time, you don't want every single line to have this like element of dread of like we know what's coming and they don't.
Yeah, I mean it's a special skill when you're doing period pieces. You really have to try and resist the temptation to constantly wink at the audience. Because it's very tempting, and it's something I had training on Mad Men, and it's a delicate balance because like you want to immerse the audience in the story, but you don't want to be fetishistic about it. So what we did is I can't worry about who knows what going into the story. Like, there are some people who like to know going in. There are some people who will not look anything up. And I've sort of, like, tested how this was by watching, like, Dr. Death and Plainville and Patrick shows and everything. Like, things where I knew the story going in. And I was still really into it. Dropout, too. Like, I even pitched on that show, didn't get it. Like, and I still watched the whole show. Their take was better than mine. I was in a weird place. Yeah, nobody wanted to see dancing office chairs. you have to commit to your story that you're telling, and just hope the audience is on the ride with you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that challenge you have with true crime. Like you just can't, I think, go into telling a story like this or any true crime story like banking on the delivery of information being the key thing. Like the audience, like what's going to happen? You have to assume that a large part of your audience knows what's going to happen, and so it has to be character-based suspense. It has to be about the emotions and the psychology.
I think we have some time for audience questions, if anybody has one. Yeah, let's what?
Who are some of your main influences, and how did you pull from them and interpret them for your show?
Okay. For the people in the back, to question about influences.
David Lynch, Hal Ashby. It's terrible. I'm going to say a bunch of directors. But to be fair, Lubitsch, Vladimir Nabokov is huge. Coen Brothers, obviously. Todd Solondz. I love. Who else have we talked about?
Matt Weiner?
Matt Weiner. My one-man film school. There was a film. I can't even believe it's based on this. There's a 1960 film starring Brigitte Bardot called La Vérité, which was hugely influential on this story, and I just discovered it from friends of mine told me to watch it. It's like French New Wave, Brigitte Bardot, like more gorgeous than you've ever seen her, if you even think that's possible. But that was a massive influence. But we just all sort of like take these great artists that we admire, and you kind of just put it in your own personal meat grinder and synthesize it into your own voice.
You mentioned earlier about the sort of the 1970s details of like looking around the room and being like, okay, we had that. Did you have sort of, was there a particular detail that was particularly hard to either recreate or to sort of find the packaging to recreate, or I don't know.
The cars.
Okay.
The cars are very difficult. It's not exactly a glamorous time for automobiles. So,
no one's holding on to
holding
yellow
on.
Volkswagen pickups?
No, that one was a find. We were super excited about that because Pat and Alan both drove VW Rabbits, like most people did, but there's very few of those Rabbits still around. We could only find one, and we gave it to Pat, and it's in one shot. But it is really, really amusing watching two guys who are 6'6", 6'7", trying to get in and out of a Rabbit. Was worth it.
I was getting a little tense watching that first episode of like, how is it going to contort?
I told Pablo, I'm just like, he drove a Rabbit, but I don't know if I should do that. He's like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And that yellow pickup, he's like, I want to take this home.
Speaking of Pablo, the hotel scenes where he's just waiting by the phone. I guess it's another thing that like if you know that Mike is going to direct it and you know his sort of style, what he's capable of, that's another case of where you can sort of right up to, like you said, right up to a point and then go from there. But as far as sort of laying out specific beats of looking at the phone, especially when there's no words, I guess there's a particular challenge there to do that.
Well, I had the extra comfort there of having worked with Pablo before on Lights Out, and I know what kind of an actor Pablo is, and I knew between Mike and Pablo, the more I stay out of this, the better it's going to be, because I'll just start fussing, and I know those two will fuss by themselves, and they will come up with a whole storyline for even when pieces of Pablo's costume come off, and it'll be deeply meaningful. And so like literally I just let them go, and it turned out incredible.
Those scenes are great. Do we have any other? Yeah, let's go in the back.
How do you approach the writing process? Is it different when your main character is basically a bad guy difficult for reporters writing, I think.
So the difference between writing a character who is maybe not heroic.
Well, you have to have empathy for all of your characters, no matter what kind of monster they are. You have to find some sort of common ground, I would think, or at least I think empathy, you know, and with every story, you just figure out the graph that you want to tell. Like, do they start here and then have a high and then fall? Like Kurt Vonnegut is a huge inference, and just look it up. He has story graphs, and you can just pick one for and just follow it. But no, I think even with baddies or anti-heroes or whatever, which one could argue Gandhi is for sure. It's just following the progression of what are her highs, what are her lows, and how do they affect everyone around you. And it's just, other than that, it's just traditional storytelling. You're just doing it with someone who's a little off.
And the writing process too, like once you had the pilot and the writer's room started, part of the process was just arguing and debating in the writer's room of like, do we believe her? Do we not believe her? And all the different people in the writer's room had kind of different perspectives. And that was a big part of the process of the scripts for the whole season coming together, where, one writer feels like that she's a sociopath and she probably planned to kill Betty. And somebody else feels like, wait, no, like I could have exploded like that if I was triggered. And
yeah.
So this was
another one blames Pat for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think we had. Do we have another one? Okay. And then down here in the front. Yeah.
I was so moved. I feel still viscerally like I need to remove myself from the space and get some fresh air. So brilliant, amazing. Question: what is it like working with a story where so many of the people who were affected are still alive, especially the children? Like, how do you handle making sure you're respecting their space, or is it something that you try to not think about and take it as a different thing?
For the people in the back, the question is about writing a show where some of the characters are still with us.
You never stop thinking about it, and I think you run into problems if you do stop thinking about it. There's a terrible responsibility that comes with telling stories that are based on real people, and respectfully, we changed the names of the kids. It's kind of a gesture because you can just Google it. I mean, there's no hiding anything in this day and age. If people want to know, they're going to find it. But the thing that we wanted to do was to tell these stories sensitively in a way that we felt comfortable was fair to everyone. And in that regard, I think every human being is both good and bad. I think we're all capable of both, and that's what makes a fully fledged human being, is you have brightness and you have darkness. So one of the aspects of good storytelling that I was told is like, you don't protect anyone. No one gets protection. But you should be fair to them.
And then I believe you also had a question as well. Yeah.
I just had a question about building suspense. You said that you know when you were visualizing it, you didn't know how much you had visualizing, and I feel like, especially in film and television, suspense is usually such a. Sometimes you can just be, how you have here. You're just looking at a phone, and it's telling such a strong story. So how do you, when you have a line in an action line that's just like we're looking at a phone, how do you convey that suspense in a screenplay, or does that come more so with the direction and the collaboration with that?
So it's building suspense.
I learned that trick from two specific sources. One was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life was in The Conjuring, when it's just a shot of an open door. just a locked off shot of an open door. Terrified. I believe I actually drew blood from my friend's arm. We saw that together, yeah. But like our another writer was sitting between us, yeah. And like I was gripping her arm, like literally like my nails bit through her skin during that. So I know how horrifying just a locked off static shot can be if you just linger there. It's really distressing. So a combination of that, and also, and this was on, you know, the front page of the script too. We started with like a tonal note, and it was just like, think of all the shots of Laura Palmer's ceiling fan, and how upsetting that is. And that's sort of where we wanted to live, was in that space. And so script-wise, we started with that tonal note, just saying like, it said something like, you know, the pace of this script is deliberate, you know, in that we start with the stakes of, you know, just small town life until someone is murdered with an axe. But like, just think of, we specifically said, think of that ceiling fan. And then I think, you know, throughout the script, I would say things like, you know, the phone rings, we hold here for a long time, something like that. Or you know, occasionally it's just like hold here until it's beyond uncomfortable.
I think I always try to think of like, what's the haiku style in writing a scene, you know, where you can just, what's the simplest, most kind of loaded way that you can, you know, just write the phone, period, he's there, whatever it is. Like you try and capture that feeling in the writing so that you feel like you've had an experience just when you're reading the script.
You know, the other cool thing is that, and we've known each other and each other's writing for 10 years now, I think. And I've seen your writing style evolve and my writing style evolve as it has in the industry. It just like, and maybe this is just, you know, the younger generation, and like both of us are thrilled by it. But there's a lot more poetic expression in scripts these days than when we started. Like, you know, using different fonts and font sizes to it comes, I think, from texting culture, you know, and like the old schools would buck against like, you don't capitalize, you don't use periods or anything. I was like, yeah, because it's a tonal expression. And that's now finding its way into our medium, and I know I do it, and I see you do it too, of just specifically picking different fonts, and it's a great way to waste time too. It's like, I gotta find the right font. But like, when you bold it, when you italicize it, like there's no rules anymore, you know, like you can set things, you know, left, sorry, for your editing, set, you know, left justified, because it just like, you just want to shake the reader's head up, you know, and there's all these little tricks that are just fun, you know.
Do we have any, yes, in the back there?
Yeah, could you speak a little more about the cinematography? You mentioned that the DP didn't use vintage lenses, but detoned 77?
Detuned.
Detuned, yeah. And like, say the decision between shooting, this is digital, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Versus saying shooting on 35 or even Super 16 to like really evoke the 80s. Like, what was the decision process in that?
This is probably, oh my God, is this being recorded or something? I might get railed for this. It's a very personal thing. And to me, I don't perceive the difference between where we've come digitally versus authentic film. Like my eye just doesn't distinguish the two, because I think we've progressed far enough. And so that being said, digital is cheaper and it's safer. I started out in film. And that's like, you know, like check the gate, and you're like, oh God, please, you know, hope we got it. But like, you know, with digital technology, with whether you have it. Now, I will also say, you know, I am a bit of a Luddite, and I also cannot tell the difference between LPs and MP3s, you know, or digital. So like, there's just a tolerance that I think that people have. But we had to shoot with a speed that made digital the right way to go. We also had an extremely gifted DP and colorist on set. So you're watching in real time, you know, they were setting it up. So you pretty much see exactly how it's going to be, you know, on set as you're shooting, and there's a great comfort in that.
And they would shoot with 3, sometimes 4 cameras at once.
3 to
which
4
I've never
cameras
seen
at one time, which
before.
I'd never seen before either. Like, just to save time and get as many setups and angles as we could. And just Simon is just a genius, and he would have all these little charts and be like, we can do there, and then like we can still win here, and I can go over here. And I'm just like, Jesus.
Which, I mean, that's a special thing. Like, a lot of DPs don't know how to use 3 or 4 cameras at the same time. It's like,
Yeah.
well, we'll just jam one in here or something. It's like, but all of his shots were.
You will meet filmmakers who can, or say they can, tell the difference between digital and authentic film. I cannot. I think I heard someone was telling me, or I read, maybe you were telling me, that for Euphoria season 2, they manufactured, their own film that was like 70s stock, so that they could have the real thing. The Ektachrome.
They brought it back or whatever.
Yeah, which looks a lot like what we did digitally to me.
And especially when you have that scene like where they're going into the house where there's so many shadows, and like it's just nice to know that like you can actually see it's coming through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it lets you be way, way, way more creative once you've shot. With it.
Do we have any more questions? Well, maybe as a way to finish off, maybe a weird way to finish off, but going back to the beginning, the first scene of Candy sort of telling the story. We sort of talked about where you start on the timeline, but like actually physically starting the show and having the first thing be this tight shot on Candy telling the story, and then not really knowing until the end where it's going. Was that sort of something that you had at the beginning of like a way to really get into that character? Or was that something that kind of developed along the way?
That came from my deep love of teasers. I think the folks over at Breaking Bad, are the masters of the medium, but I can always try. So that came from like really wanting to have a teaser that sort of like made you question like, what is going on here? And it also it serves all the great teasers that I know that will tell you the entire story of not even just that episode, but of the entire series. And it like, think of The Wire with Jimmy McNulty sitting on the step with that street kid, talking about how Snot Boogie, ran off with the money and this time they killed him. And he's like, well, if they let him play all the time, like if he ran away with the money all the time, why did they let him keep playing? And he's just like, this is America, man, you got to. And I was like, well, that's the entire show right there. So we were trying to find something that would tell you the whole story. And with this little, children's story that Candy tells when she's talking about this tree, how it did everything right. And it had something that it wanted. And somebody came along and said, no, you can't do that because we need you to do this. And it's for everybody, and it's better for you, so everybody's happy. And then we see the pain in Jessica, telling that, like, that's her whole story. And then you have the little kicker with Pat, which just tells you like everything you need to know about that marriage. Like their whole dynamic.
It's also very, very fitting too, just in a simple way, because the show is such a showcase for Jessica's performance and her commitment and disappearance into the role felt kind of perfect.
Yeah, like sit back, you're in good hands. She's going to tell you a story, and just it's going to be fine.
When we first met Jessica in person, she took us axe throwing, and we were like,
Yeah.
all right, she's the right person.
Just dressed all in white, in a white suit, she like disappears into this shed and comes out with like 4 hatchets, and we're like, oh my god.
Well, I know I said that was going to be the last question, but I realized we haven't talked about Melanie at all, which
yes.
is like a very important part of this puzzle. What kind of conversations did you have about, you mentioned sort of Jessica having a specific take on Candy. What were some of the things that sort of Melanie brought to Betty and how she could sort of make her a full person?
Melanie was my sister in arms, and that like the very first conversation that she wanted to have is that she wanted to be absolutely reassured that we were handling Betty with respect. That she wanted to know that we weren't just, because you hear Lady on Lady Axe Murder, you know, like you could go total camp. Like Melanie just wanted to make sure that this woman was going to be dealt with respectfully, which was incredibly important to me. And I had such a partner in Melanie, in that she was so trusting. You know, there's a point later on the show where I had to say, I was like, Melanie, I need you to say this line in 3 different locations because I won't know until editing where it's going to land the hardest. She's like, okay. I trust you. But she's just a dream. If anyone ever gets the chance to work with Melanie Lynskey, absolutely snatch it up.
Yeah, and I was telling the story to somebody before, but it's like when you wrote the part and then we had the initial casting conversation, Hulu said, you know, okay, what kind of type are we looking for in terms of casting Betty? And Robin was just like, the type is Melanie Lynskey because it's not a type. I wrote it for Melanie Lynskey. Let's go get her.
Yeah.
Whatever we got to do.
Mike knows her. We have an in.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to capitalize on that. Well, Robin, Nick, thank you so much for taking time to talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And and we should say that this premieres on Hulu on Monday,
Yes.
and it's an episode every day for the week leading up to Friday the 13th.
Yep.
Which
Had to.
Yeah.
It was right there.
Yeah. Well,
Mother's Day to Friday the 13th.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and your weekend here at Series Fest.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.